Hi guys, welcome to Vesna TV. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today we've got a full hour packed with some creative vase upcycles that are easy and you can try at home without breaking the bank. So we'll be using a mix of recycled materials, Dollar Tree finds, and some great thrifted treasures. So grab your supplies, get comfy, and let's jump right in. I'm upcycling a mason jar as well as a little bottle that some barbecue rubs came in. So what I've done first is I've spray painted the bottle, and I'm spray painting it with the Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint. And it's a fairly small bottle, so it doesn't take a lot to spray paint it, and I only had to do one coat for this bottle. So when you're spray painting, you just want to make sure that you're just kind of applying very thin layers because you don't want to do too much, otherwise it'll drip. So the next project, I'm not finished with the first one, but the next project I'm spray painting my mason jar, and I'm using the Rust-Oleum satin spray paint in Lagoon. And I'm using this mason jar because it has a little bit of a, not a crack, but a little nick or something at the top, so you can't really seal it properly to use it as a mason jar, so I'm going to be using this for my project. Now this one I did have to do 2 coats. Once I finished spray painting these, I went ahead and I just tied this rope, and I apologize for my camera. My little guy is playing with his car right in front of me as I'm trying to record this, so I apologize. So I tied this rope that I had left over from a different project just to add a little bit of decor to the jar. And I really love this color, so I think it'll be a great pop of color for the summer for my living room, or even maybe my outdoor space. I haven't decided where I'll put it yet. So I will be using this as a tissue dispenser, so I'll show you how I've done that. Okay, so I'm using a brand new box of tissues, and what I'm going to do is just take a few out, and I'm going to roll them up and then put them in the jar themselves, and just take one from the outside and kind of wiggle it up, so that way you can take the tissues out. Now obviously I'm not going to be using all of these. I took a few, and even this was too many, so you'll see that I wind up using less. So you may just have to play around with it depending on the size of your jar. So I was going to add a few more, but then I thought this worked, so I'm going to leave it out like that because I don't want to overstuff it. And there you have it. I think it turned out really pretty. So for the next project, I'm going to take my bottle and I'm going to wrap some jute rope around it. This is leftover. I apologize for the plane. So I saw the pieces were too small and I did not want to hot glue them on, so I'm just going to use the roll that I had of the jute rope just to make life easier on me. So I just wrap this around and I tie it up here. And I'm going to wrap it all the way around, and then I will tie it up one more time, and I'm going to leave this this piece a little bit longer just so I can make just a little bit of a bigger knot, like a decorative piece. Now I'm going to use this, so the reason I kept this bottle is because I wanted a little mini vase for different little flowers that I have in my garden in the springtime. So it could be for hyacinth, it could be for lily, I think they're lily of the valley is what they're called. I always wind up using a shot glass, which my husband doesn't like. Well, neither do I, because it's kind of, I don't know, whatever. So I thought this would be perfect for that. So I am antiquing it as well, just a little bit, just distressing it a bit with my brown espresso paint from Art Minds. This paint is from Michael's. So here are the finished products. Please don't mind my hands. I have been painting. I really like the way they turned out. They're cute little projects, and it's stuff that I had on hand, which I really like. And they'll go well inside, and I just love them. So if you really like them and you want to see more, please make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit that notification button, and make sure you like my video if you liked it. So this old wine jug came from my parents' house. It's actually a red hot bottle, but I'm pretty sure my dad used this as a wine bottle when he was doing his homemade wine, so that's why I called it a wine bottle. So what I have to start off by doing is just cleaning it off with some rubbing alcohol, and then I sanded it down just a little bit for the paint to stick better. And I'm using the Rust-Oleum Lagoon spray paint. I discovered the spray paint recently, and I love the color. So when you spray paint anything, you want to make sure that you're not applying too much, otherwise it drips. So as you can see there, I'm wiping it off. It's hard anyway because this is standing up, but I didn't want to do it laying down because it would roll around. So if it drips, you can just wipe it off and then apply the spray paint again. So I did about 3 coats just because I wasn't applying very heavy coats onto this. So again, it's just to avoid the dripping of the paint. I left this wine jug to dry, and as it was drying, I wanted to put in into the jug a flower, and the flower that I wanted to use was a orchid that I had left over actually from my wedding. So I'm going to be spray painting it white with the Rust-Oleum chalked linen white. And same for this flower, I had to, same as the jug, I applied several coats. I think it was about 3 altogether. For 2 reasons. The dripping wasn't the problem. It just wasn't covering it completely because the petals were one on top of the other. While those were drying, I purchased this tub of beads at the thrift store for $5. I thought that was a great deal. And I decided that I wanted to do like a little bead garland. So I'm using this twine, but what I've done is I've actually taken it apart into several pieces. I measured roughly how much I needed of the twine lengthwise. I did a little bit more, and I'm just going to add the beads as needed, and if I need to take some out, I'll take some out. And I'm not using any of the darker brown ones, just the light brown. I joined the 2 sides of the garland together, and I added a few more at the bottom of the garland, so you'll see in the finished product. I then went ahead to cut out an S. I didn't use my Cricut, it's just 1 letter, so I just freehand drew it and I cut it out. And I'm going to paint it with my chalked, Rust-Oleum chalk paint in linen white. The S is for our last name, and I'm going to be attaching it to my bead garland. So while that was drying, I did go ahead and wrap the top of the bottle with some twine, and then I just hot glued the ends to the bottle. However, I did not have footage of this, so I apologize. But you can see it here how I've done that, and I did go around the handle as well. I absolutely love the way this turned out. I've added the S there, and I'm just styling it with some other things. I redid this birdhouse, and I can post the video as well. Loving the way the beads turned out. This color is amazing. I love, love, love the way these orchids turned out. You can still see some of the pink through, but it's pretty white, and it's mellowed that pink down almost completely. Looks awesome. So if you like this video and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, and hit that like button. To be using 3 mason jars. Now these jars were from a friend who was throwing them out, and she had asked me if I wanted them, so I said for sure. Now she gave me a whole bunch, so some of them I've used for canning and a few I've used for decor pieces. So you need 3 jars. They don't have to be mason jars. You can even have, if you have 3 of the same ones that you've saved from, salsa or something like that, you could use those. And I'm going to be painting them out in a few different colors. I will be mixing the colors. So for the first jar, I will be using the Country Gray from Rust-Oleum. For the second, I'll be mixing this warm white and cotton candy pink. And then for the next jar, I'll be mixing these 3 colors together, the forest green, warm white, and the Pacific blue. Now, I'll also be adding a little bit of that Country Gray to each one of those colors just to get a good mix. And basically what I did was I mixed them all together, and then if I thought it was a little bit dark or not light enough or too not rustic or farmhousey enough, I kind of added a little bit more of the gray, if that makes any sense. But I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted it to be a really muted kind of dull color. Now I did want the jars to look distressed, so I'm only putting like 1 coat of the paint, and I'm using kind of a coarser brush so that you can kind of see the brush strokes in it, so it looks like these mason jars are really aged. And so as you can see, I'm just doing like a light stroke like that, and then I kind of go over top and add a little bit more, but I only do the 1 coat. I don't go back over it once they dry. I do on one of them just because I'm patching up a spot that I missed. The next one added a dab of pink and a dab of the warm white, and then I went and I put a little bit more of the pink, and I was using the same brush that I used for the gray with the Country Gray, so it kind of gives it that muted gray look as well, grayish pink look. And then for the third jar, I did a combination of the warm white, the forest green, and then I added a little blob of the gray. I did not wind up using the blue. The blue I will be using for the next project. I thought I might add it in here, but then after I saw the way that it came out, I did not add it. So if you guys haven't been to my channel before, my name is Vesna, and I do all things DIY, home decor on a budget. So all the little DIYs that I make, they are for my home. I do seasonal decor and just any kind of DIYs that I need for my house, I create on this channel, and I try to really do it on a budget. So if that's the kind of stuff you like and you haven't subscribed, please do consider subscribing. And hitting that notification bell so you can see when I make new videos. Once the jars dry, I then need to attach them together. So what I'm actually doing is using a combination of hot glue and weld bond, and I'm attaching them one to another, and then I'll be attaching a piece of jute rope around, and I'll go a few times around at the bottom and kind of in between, just to kind of give it an illusion of it being a caddy. I'm not going to be carrying this around, but if you wanted to make it a little bit more sturdy, if you're worried that it might fall apart with the glue, it won't, but if you're worried that it will, you can always put a piece of craft, like a craft stick at the bottom, or a piece of wood, or a paint stick, like a stir stick, and attach it to the bottom with some hot glue and some either E6000 or Weld Bond, whichever you have, and that will it'll just give you an additional support system for these jars. But I did not use that, but I'm just letting you know, if that's kind of your worry, then you can attach that at the bottom and it'll just stick them all together. Once they were attached, I decided that I wanted to distress them further, so I used some of the Rust-Oleum decorative glaze in Java. So I applied it with a little brush, a bigger brush, and then I blended everything in with a rag. Don't push too hard, because if you haven't protected these, so sealed them, which I haven't because I wanted to put the decorative glaze on, you might take some of the paint off. So do a really gentle scrub when you blend it all together. And you don't have to do this process. I just wanted them to look a little bit more messy, if that makes sense, or dirty, kind of old, like really, really old. I added the glaze all around, even in the back of the jars, and then I picked up some floral picks at the Dollar Tree. You can put anything you want in this. If you have fresh flowers, like I can't wait to use some fresh peonies or forsythia, anything that kind of blooms in the spring, even tulips or hyacinths if you have them. You can use them because these are glass jars, so you can put that in there and you can use them like vases. But because we still have, 15 feet of snow, not literally, but we still have lots of snow and it's very cold outside, I picked up some floral picks at the Dollar Tree, just green ones which remind me of spring, and I popped them into the jars. I absolutely love spring, so I can't wait for the flowers to start coming up. The winter's so long and so dark, and spring just reminds me of of happiness and brightness and sunshine and warmth. So I'm really excited to be doing these spring DIYs and adding these nice florals and putting them all around my house to brighten it up and make it look warmer. So here is what they look like all finished. So I love all things old and rustic looking, and these just turned out exactly the way I wanted them. They look roughed up, old, and like they've been sitting around for a really long time. And on the other hand, they're really cheery and bright with the flowers and the lighter colors. Just like I said, remind me of spring. So a beautiful, easy to do spring farmhouse themed DIY that anyone can do even for free if you have these jars on hand. So really good DIY. Another jar. Now this is just a jar. It's not a mason jar. It's just a jar from, I think, artichokes from Costco. So I'm going to be painting it in this Pacific blue. But again, I'm adding a little bit of warm white, and I'm going to add some of that country gray from Rust-Oleum just to mix it in. You can use any kind of gray if you have it. I don't have, other than a metallic gray, I don't have a gray acrylic paint. I keep on forgetting to buy it whenever I go to the store, but I have this country gray on hand, and the chalk paints do dry out if you don't use them up. At least they have for me. If you guys have a secret to not have them dry out, please let me know. But if you let them sit for too long, they will dry out. So use them if you have them, if you're not going to be using them for something else. And even if you are, use them and you can buy more, because better than having them dry out because you're saving them for a project. So I'm just adding a little bit of that gray, as you can see. And you might be able to find these pastel-y muted colors already pre-prepped if you didn't want to mix them yourself. But basically you need a warm white, a blue, light blue, and a gray. Now the country gray is a little bit more of a brownish gray, but you get the idea. And then I am doing kind of a fuller coverage of this one, a little bit more than the other one, as I wanted it to be more covered than the other one. But again, I'm just doing one layer. I'm not doing more than one coat of it. While that's drying, I go ahead and prepare the backing for this little vase. And I'm using 2 pieces of scrap wood. It was actually a longer piece of wood that I cut in half. And they're about 12 inches. But again, you can use any length you want. This is just what I had, and I made use of it. So I do want it to be wide though. And so it's about 8 inches wide, and I am painting it in the linen white from Rust-Oleum. This is all chalk paint, and I'm using the white because, again, I find that this big can of paint lasts me much longer than the little acrylic paints would, so I always get the big can of it at Home Depot, and it lasts me quite a bit. So I paint both boards. I cover them pretty well, but I will be distressing it, so even if you don't cover it the best, it's okay, because like I said, I'm distressing it, so it's not the end of the world. And then I'm going to be attaching the boards together. To attach them, I'm using just wood glue, this LePage wood glue, as well as hot glue. The hot glue I always put on when I can't clamp things together, or when I want to be working with them a lot faster than it takes to dry. probably a better idea to put hot glue on one side and the other glue on the other side, but I wasn't really thinking and I just did it this way. And then I also go ahead and on the back, I just put on half of a paint stick. So I cut it in half and I just put one half at the top and one half at the bottom just to give it an additional little enforcement. After I give this time to set a little bit, just a couple minutes, I go ahead and I distress it, and I distress it using the same blue combination of blue paint that I used to paint the jar. And I'm just dry brushing it on. So dry brushing is when you take a little bit of paint and dab it off and then apply just as you can see, just like a light coat of the paint on there. And like I said, I'm just distressing it, and if I put too much, I add a little bit of the white, and it's not really a big deal to, if you've put too much on, you're like, I don't like the way this looks, you just repaint over it. And then I also add a little bit of the espresso brown from like an acrylic paint from Dollar Tree, an espresso brown, and I dry brush that on just to get it to look a little bit more distressed. And I probably should have done this before I started distressing it, but I scraped off any of the glue that was coming out from them being glued together. And then I go ahead to attach the jar. Originally I was going to have this hang on the wall and I was going to attach the jar with a clamp. However, the clamp that I had was too small for the jar, and our Home Depot is curbside pickup only because of the lockdown, and I just felt awkward ordering just a clamp, so I didn't bother going to get it. So I changed my mind, and then I decided that I was going to paint the bottom out too, which I should have done in the first place. But I painted the bottom out, let it dry, and then I hot glued and weld bond glued this jar to the board, but I did it at the bottom, and then I added a back, like a little lip at the back, so that it would be kind of like a sign that stands on its own versus something that hangs. So that way, if the jar came off for whatever reason, it would not break and shatter to the floor. I just thought that that was a better solution to this just for now. Normally you could do a clamp that you would put on there and then screw onto the board, but because I didn't have the clamp, I modified it. Probably should have planned my project better, but I thought we had the clamps at home. I swear, and I think we do, because I had wanted to use those clamps for a different project where I was going to do 3 not spice but herb jars and hang them on the wall, and I know I bought the clamps, but I couldn't find them. The lip at the bottom is just 2 pieces of scrap wood that I attached with the weld bond. I could have used wood glue. I'm not sure why I used weld bond, but I used weld bond and hot glue, and I just attached them to the bottom so it would kind of provide something for the sign to stand on. And like I said, because the jar is so low, it helps it stand. So it seems to be that every video I forget to hit the record button. So I forgot to hit the record button, but I had wrapped jute rope around the sign at the top and hot glued it at the back. And then I used my Cricut to cut out this home, not sign, but this home stencil. And I'm just going to be using some black acrylic paint to paint in the word home. I also wrapped the jute rope around the jar at the top just to kind of tie everything together. And when you're dabbing in, like whenever you use vinyl to like as a stencil and you're dabbing stuff in, make sure you're not using too much paint, because if you use too much paint, it'll bleed. So you don't want it to bleed, and just let it dry before you start removing the vinyl. And that's all there is to this. I added this lavender from the Dollar Tree that I had from last year, and there's the finished piece. It's another gorgeous piece. I love the way it turned out. Very farmhouse spring to me. Like I said, free to make because I had all the stuff on hand, and you can too. The only thing is if you don't have the scrap pieces of wood, you could do it on one of the Dollar Tree signs that they have. You know, they have many signs that they sell during the spring and summer and Christmas and whatever, and just paint it out if you didn't have this. But again, it turned out really beautifully. It's going to look great in my spring decor, and I love it. I am using this metal sunflower vase from one of our local thrift stores, and I'm going to be sanding down the farmhouse sunflowers or farm fresh sunflowers, that little sign. Although I didn't mind the color and I didn't mind the sunflowers, it just didn't really fit in with my decor, so I'm going to be making it a little bit different. I'm going to save that little leaf that's up there, and like I said, I'll just sand it down so that way you can't see it, and that's all that in terms of prep work, that's all I'm doing. Once I sand it down and rough it up, I'm going to be painting it, and I'm using the Serenity Blue from Rust-Oleum chalked paint. It's similar to the Duck Egg Blue from Annie Sloan. If you've tried Annie Sloan paint, I really like it. It's kind of like a grayish light blue. I really love this color. I painted my island in this color in the Duck Egg Blue, but I painted my island in that color. I painted another entertainment unit in that color mixed with a little bit of white. It's kind of like a mix of it. I love this color a lot. So I'm just going to do one full coat of coverage, and then I just go back and I touch it up just slightly if there's any of the green showing through. The touch-ups were minimal. I just did a little bit where, you know, if I smudged with my finger or something like that, because I didn't mind a little bit of the green coming through because I will be distressing it. So you'll see that in the next clip. To distress this, I used several colors. I was going to use my liquid gilding copper, but it finally became too old and dried out on me, so I didn't get much out from there. So then I wound up using a little bit of the gold metallic, silver metallic, black, and cashmere paints. I kind of mixed them together and did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then that helped me achieve. I wanted it to look like there was like a blackish tarnished metal peeling off. That's what I wanted to look on the this little vase, and I really think I achieved it. Some spots were a little bit too dark, so I did go over with the blue again, but I did that purposely because the sign that I did put on it, I wanted to go over it with blue, so it was okay. It just kind of dulled down the distressed parts. So I remember when I first started distressing things, and I was always worried, well, what if I do it too much, or what if I don't like it? The beauty of paint, and I say this in every video, is that you can just go over it with your other paint. It's not permanent. Sharpie is a little bit harder to go over with, but it's still possible. So it's not the end of the world unless you don't have the paint anymore. But the way you get it to look the way you want is just by playing around with it. At least for me, there's no set rule. Well, I do 3 strokes this way and 4 strokes this way. I don't. I kind of put it on, push it away from me a little bit, look at it from further away, and then if I think it needs more, I add more. If it needs less, then I always dull it down with the paint that I started with. Again, it's trial and error. The more you do it, the better at it you get. And I've found this technique of using baby wipes to kind of blend some of the paints together. So that's what I'm doing here. And as you can see, it's turning out really nice. And again, dulling down that black so it's not so black. And then I did put that cashmere into a separate container just so that I could get a little bit more, or sorry, not the cashmere, the metallic gold, just so I could get that out a little bit more. And like I said, it's trial and error. And if you don't want to do it on the project that you're doing, you could always do it on just a piece of wood or something like that, just to see, okay, is that the color that I want to do, if you don't want to have the extra work of going back over it. So I went ahead and I created this flowers and garden sign lettering actually from with my Cricut. If you can find these letters at the Dollar Tree, you don't need a Cricut, but you do need something to have like a little bit of a bump on it. You don't want to, I didn't want to use this as a stencil. I wanted it to be actually the vinyl on the vase. So if you can find vinyl letters, or if you're brave enough to cut them out yourself, you could do that or use your Cricut. I thought I was going to do this shape around as well, and you'll see that I'm painting over it so you wouldn't see the black, but then when I put the flowers in garden, I didn't like the way it looked, so I wound up taking it off. So then I just used transfer tape to apply it to my vase. This video is a part of a challenge hosted by Jamie over at Border Bananas, and it's her Flippin' Friday challenge, which she has every month, where she challenges us to find something from the thrift store and make it over and make it look beautiful again, or make it completely different. Whatever you decide, that's your choice. And like I said, she hosts this every month. Please check her out. I'll have her information linked below. I'll have the playlist linked below as well. The playlists have been a little bit wonky, so you may have to use a computer to see the playlist. I think there has been some issues with them. I'm not sure, but everything will be linked below, so check everybody out. And there's going to be lots of creators, so check them out as well. Back to the video. So as you can see, I've applied the flowers and garden here, and now I'm just kind of taking a look. I'm seeing that the F goes too far, so I was going to cut it down, and then when I cut it down, I decided that I really didn't like the way it looked, so then I just wound up removing it eventually. And like I said, all of this is trial and error. If paint had come off when I was removing it, I would have touched it up. I'm not ever afraid to touch anything up or to fix something, because paint is amazing to work with, and any kind of chalk paint is very forgiving and really easy to work with. If you haven't tried it, I really do recommend that you try. I love the Rust-Oleum chalk linen paint. It's easier to get. I love Annie Sloan too, but it's a little bit more difficult to get, depending, I guess, where you are. At least where we are here, it's a little bit more difficult. So then when I remove that, I decide that I need to go over it, and I knew I would be going over it with the blue. So again, I do my method of applying the blue paint and then removing it off with a wipe. Now this time this wipe was a little bit dry. It wasn't completely wet, so it didn't take everything off, but it just gave me the look that I was going for. So once I got the coverage I was looking for, I then went ahead and just put some flower picks. These I believe I bought off of AliExpress a few years ago. They're just roses, and I think they're very cute, so I've popped them in here, and here's what it looks like all finished. And last but not least, I have this little container from the thrift store, and I'm going to be painting it, spray painting it in white, and also painting it over with chalk linen white. So I like to always spray paint, because with these things it kind of gives a nice base coat, and then I can just put the chalk paint on as something to give it a little bit more depth and texture. So after I do the Rust-Oleum coat on top of the spray painted coat, I was going to use that stencil with the lemonade font, lemonade word that I used at the beginning, like what that I showed you on the Cricut that I wrote in the skinny font, well, the lemon font. Well, I was going to use that stencil. However, it was bleeding because I think because of the ridges and the curve of this vase, it just wasn't working out for me. Maybe I was doing something wrong. Not sure. So I improvised and I used a Sharpie just to write in the words. Whenever you write words on something like this, you want to kind of find your center, and then you start with your letter in the middle, and then you kind of work your way out and then out, kind of from the middle and then to the right, and then from the middle to the left, and then that way it kind of looks more centered. And I used a thicker Sharpie and then a thinner Sharpie. I went over it with the thinner Sharpie just to get it to look the way that I wanted to. So just a quick note, anytime you want to distress stuff, you make sure that you take on your paint and then you dab the extra off so that you don't have too much paint. Otherwise it'll either bleed or it won't look the best. And I don't have like a rhyme or reason to the way I distress. I just kind of look at it and put it where I think it needs it. So again, here it is all completed. I think it turned out really cute. So I bought this little vase or candle holder and these stickers. So these are like the pearl dot stickers. I don't know why they're deemed essential. They were in the school section. I don't know if they were put there by accident and the cashier sold them to me and shouldn't have sold them to me, but there was lots of them there. So I'm assuming for whatever reason they were deemed as a school supply. Probably like whatever that barcode is that they have, they deemed it as a school item. So I could buy them. So I bought them. So I'm going to be giving some texture to this candle holder. And I'm just going to wrap these around as straight as I can make them to go all the way around the vase. And then I'll be painting it in the chalk linen white paint, inside and out. So when I got the idea to make this, I actually thought that I would just glue, like just do dots of hot glue all around. And to be honest with you, I think it might have been easier. These were a little bit finicky to put around and to make sure that they were going straight because the vase or candle holder was curved. So it was a little bit more difficult. So just keep that in mind if you're going to recreate this. And here it is completed. I even love that it's a little bit kind of wobbly. It just gives that a little bit more of a rustic edge to it. I might go back and distress it even a little bit more and have it be even more rustic looking, but for now I really like the way it looks. It's a cute little addition to a tray. I'm creating a kind of trash to treasure item using this peanut butter jar. And all I'm doing is I'm going to make it look like a little planter. I am remodeling my kitchen. Well, renovating my kitchen, renovating my whole main floor basically. Well, not my whole main floor, just kitchen, laundry, and powder room and hall. And so I think this will look really nicely on my island. So what I'm doing is, like I said, I have this big jar of peanut butter that I've washed out, cleaned, and everything. Some of the sticky parts did not come off of the jar, which is okay because it will all be covered up with some twine, some jute rope. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap this around, and I just kind of dab a little bit of hot glue as I go. I don't do like like a ribbon of hot glue and then put the twine over top of it. I just kind of do little dots here and there, and sometimes I do a whole roll without doing it. Just do whatever suits you and however you find comfortable. I've sped it up here for you, and I'll cut off a little bit so that you don't have to watch me, turning rope around a little container. Maybe a little bit boring for you guys. So I'll cut out a little bit and show you what it is. finish, well, what it is close to being finished. Okay, so here I am pretty close to being finished. At the top, I did add a little bit extra just to cover the lip of the jar. You can do however you wish. I was actually planning on putting handles on this, but I had a little mishap with my paint. So the handles that I planned on attaching to it, they didn't match, and then I kind of got frustrated and I gave up on the handles. But you can totally add handles if you'd like. I think after seeing how this turned out, I will be creating one more on my hanging planter. Like I'll be recreating my hanging planter the same way, and maybe even another little planter on the floor. I haven't decided, and not a little one, it's a big one, so I don't know if I want to take on that challenge unless I find some really thick jute rope. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, so once I finished and hot glued everything, I move on to painting. So I didn't know that you could paint jute rope. Well, I figured you probably could, but I didn't know how it would turn out. So instead of getting out the amount of jute rope I need, which you totally could do, you could wrap it around and see how much you need for however much. It might be easier in terms of not getting over splatter or anything like that, but you could spray before you attach it to the jar. I decided to do it this way, and what I did is actually, like I said, once I finished all of my twine, I took the jar and I just wrapped some clear tape around where I wanted to split it in half because I wanted this container to be white and black. You could probably buy painted jute rope, like colored jute rope. Not probably, I know you can buy rope, but I didn't have any on hand, and I'm really trying really hard to not spend a lot of money right now. So again, I wrapped that tape around to give me kind of, to cover that part of the planter, and the bottom part I'm just painting with this flat black paint from Tremclad. And here it is, what it looks like all painted. Now I was going to do a different white paint, but the little top would not work. Like I couldn't press it down. So, and it's full, it's really sad. So if you have any tips on how to get that to work, please let me know. I'm pretty sure it's done now. And so I wound up using this other Rust-Oleum heirloom white paint. And then I move on to decorating this little planter. Now you can put oh my gosh, the word is escaping me. You can put floral foam into it if you'd like. I am just putting some tissue paper in there, and because it's still Christmas in July, I'm adding some Christmas decorations in here so you can kind of get an idea what you could do for Christmas. But I did make the pot neutral so that way you can use it any time of the year, and I'm going to show you two different ways to use it. So for the purposes of this video and it being Christmas in July, and I have been posting Christmas DIYs, I thought I would do a Christmas decor. So here it is all finished, spray painted. So I just spray painted like you normally spray paint, and I did the tape on each side to help with not spraying all over the planter. But I think it turned out really cute, and it's going to look awesome either on my kitchen or it'll go into the powder room. I haven't decided yet. And if it does go in the kitchen, you can always do a little bit of basil and or any kind of flower or herb if you'd like. That's why I wanted to use a plastic instead of like a tin or you could do jars as well because they don't leak. So if you put your little planter in there, so my basil has a little plastic planter that has drainage holes, and then I put it in here, it's not going to leak and it's going to keep the water in and it's going to look beautiful. Let me know what you think. So the next project that I'm doing, or treasure that I'm doing, is the jar of pickles from Costco. So it's just a nice big jar with a lid. I'm not going to be using the lid, but you could if you wanted to use it as a storage container. I'll be using my Vase interior paint because that's what I have left over. Normally I would paint this with chalk paint, but I don't have any white chalk paint left. And I've just got a brush that I got at Home Depot. It's a natural Bristol brush. So what I'll do is actually I'll put 2 coats of paint on this because the first coat I just do it lightly just so the second coat has something to hold on to stick to. So I just go over it making sure that everything is covered, and then I do it one more time. Even though it doesn't have to be perfect, I still don't want the glass to be showing. So now I'm going to go ahead and just distress the bottle. I've added another coat of white just to cover the spots that I didn't think got covered enough. I am using Annie Sloan Cocoa chalk paint to do a little bit of the distressing, and then I will also add a little bit of the Rust-Oleum chalked paint in charcoal. So here's the final product. I think it turned out really nice. I like the flowers that I put in there, the nice peonies. I did add a little strip of burlap around. I just hot glued it. I just thought it gave it an extra touch. Sorry I didn't record myself doing that. Again, I'm not sure why. So if you liked this video, make sure you hit the notification bell and subscribe to my channel. So for this is kind of like an upcycle. It's not really a DIY. I got this lantern at Winners a few years ago. I actually got it on clearance because it was chipped to begin with and it had some rust stains. So what I did was I actually just spray painted it with this Rust-Oleum spray paint that I've been dying to try out. I bought it last year and I haven't used it yet, and I absolutely love the way it turned out. And I'll just be adding a little bit of jute rope to the handle, and that's all there is to this DIY. So I've had to repaint this a few times because my kids kept on getting into it. So now I'll just use some jute rope and I'll just attach it to the handle, and it'll just give, in my opinion, it'll give just a bit of extra character to this. So as you can see, I'm wrapping it around and then just hot gluing it in certain parts just to keep it a little bit tight, but you don't have to. You could, if you have a nice long piece, you could go wrap it around the whole way and then hot glue it. It makes it a little bit easier if you hot glue it in a few spots along the way, but up to you. And here is the finished piece. I absolutely love the color. I don't know that I'll leave it out on my front porch. I might move it to the back deck to add more color there, but I absolutely love it. And then for these guys, these are just coffee tins. So this is my trash to treasure item. They're a coffee tin. One was a Kirkland coffee tin and the other one was a McDonald's coffee tin. And I'm just going to be adding some hot glue to give it some texture and then painting them out. So I've just added to this one hot glue onto 3 of the ridges, 2 thicker bands and 1 thinner band. And I go ahead, I'll show you how I did it on the second one. And then I painted in the Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint. Did forget to mention, sometimes the coffee tins have like stuck on glue. If you just use a scraper to get those off, and if you have Goo Gone, you can use Goo Gone to remove it and just sand it off. It comes right off. Once they are nice and dry, I've only applied one coat. You can see, I mean, the coverage is there, but it's not perfect. That's okay because my plan is to add some black acrylic paint, which I rub in with a baby wipe. So if you've watched my channel before, you know I love to use that baby wipe to rub in paint. It gives me such a nice look when I do that. If I do it on wood, it brings out the grain. If I do it on other things, it just makes it blend really nicely and look really nice. So what I do is I add acrylic paint to this and then I wipe it off. Don't wipe too hard, and if you don't want it to be too black, don't add too much black. You can dab off, like dry brush the black on and then smush it in. Really depends what look you're going for. So I wanted it to be a little bit darker. So I added the paint, rubbed it off. Then I carried the paint that I added all the way around and then I added some more. And I just kind of basically layered until I got the look that I was going for. You might be able to tell that in some spots I took some of the paint off because I rubbed too hard, so don't rub too hard. And then I just went back and I fixed it and I just put a little bit of white. And basically I kept on layering until I got the look that I was going for. So this is what's awesome about paint. Every project can turn out differently because you can make it like really your own, however you want. If you want it darker, lighter, whatever. I love paint and I love blending colors and layering colors. I just think it just gives that such a unique look to a piece. And that's all there is to this one. They are all finished out on my front porch. I think they look great. I just added some greenery from the backyard, some boxwood and something else. I don't know what it is. It's just a bush, so I just trimmed off some branches and I think they just turned out lovely. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. So I've got this, like I said, that I actually used just to have some stationery in there. And at some point I had apparently put these decor pieces on, not decor pieces, just pieces of paper and magazine things. I think that was done when I was in high school or something like that. Like I've had this tin for a very long time. It's a little bit embarrassing. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is just paint the tin white first, and I'm just using Vase paint that I have, an interior paint just left over from I think painting something in our house. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint the can completely white, try to cover as much of the folgers as I can. That way I can have a blank canvas to do my galvanizing. Now, I probably should have painted it like a gray or something like that, but I really didn't have a gray paint available, so I went with white, and it turned out okay. Maybe it was a little bit more work than it had to be, but so here it is. It's not perfect, but it's pretty much covered. And I'm going to use this, and sorry you can't see it, acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree, and it's a metallic silver, as well as charcoal from Rust-Oleum. It's their chalked paint. So, and I have this little dabber that I use, and so I'm just going to dab on the black or the charcoal first, and just random pattern. I'm not really thinking too much about it at this point. I'm just covering it up. Once I cover everything up, I notice that the grooves from the coffee tin are coming out white, and I didn't want them to come out white, so I will be painting those with silver. You'll see it in the next few clips. But so what you want to do is just cover the entire can with the black. So once I've covered it entirely in black, then I go ahead and I start adding the silver. And again, I'm kind of going over top, getting rid of some of the white and blending it in with the black. So here you can see what I was talking about. I started to kind of fill in the grooves, but I realized that I need a different brush, so I grabbed my other brush, which is like a stenciling brush that is also from the Dollar Tree, and I use that one because it's nice and thin, just to go through the grooves, and then I'll continue dabbing. So once I've done that, I go ahead and I add more black. I let it dry off, and then I realized that it's too much, so I'm adding white. I'm just using some washable Crayola paint. That's my son's. I just decided to use that one. And so I add a little bit of white to that to achieve my galvanized look. And here it is, that you can see how nicely it turned out. So for my next DIY, I'm going to be using these hurricane vases. I have 2 of them, as well as these Gerber daisies. I think these Gerber daisies came from like a centerpiece from a baby shower or something like that. I don't know, or I might have bought them. I had them in my like box of florals from years and years ago, so I'm not entirely sure where they came from. So I'm kind of playing around with it, whether I want to wrap the pink fabric around the vase or just put it in. I kind of went 2 ways, and you guys can let me know which way you like. If you would have done it this way or the other way, but I'll show you what I wound up choosing after I saw it. So I looked at these, and I was cutting down the flowers so that they could be the same height. And then I put the fabric in, and I went and I looked at them from further away, and I thought, this is too simple. So I did wind up wrapping the fabric around with a hot glue gun. So I continued to wrap this around, just adding the hot glue first at the beginning and then on my second wraparound. And I did this because I didn't want the hot glue to show through too much. So then I wound up wrapping it around and then just at the end putting some hot glue. Unfortunately, my phone stopped recording, so I did not record that part, but here are the finished pieces. I think these turned out super cute. I'm doing a trash item that I'm upcycling. So I'm using this um, maple syrup container from Costco. It's a Kirkland maple syrup container. And I'm going to be just spray painting it this white color. I'm not going to record myself spray painting. But to start off with, I'm just doing a base coat of white spray paint. So after I spray paint it, I do decide that I need to add a little bit more white to it. So I'm using my Rust-Oleum chalked linen white paint to just go over the bottle with a coat of the white paint. And again, I'm doing all sorts of strokes. I'm not going in one direction because it is chalk paint and it is okay to have it go in all sorts of directions. And I'm doing this because it'll just give that like a little bit more depth to the paint. So, and that's the kind of look I was going for. So once I finish that, then I add a little bit of decor to it. So I'm making kind of like because to me, this bottle looks like an old milk can or something like that. So I am wanting to use it as a vase. After my paint dries, I add a little bit of jute rope. Now this jute rope is just left over from a project that I had done and then redone because I wasn't happy with the way it looked. So this was a little piece left over. So I'm just going to be attaching it, well, hot gluing it to the top of the bottle. And it's just to give it a little bit more detail. So I just put the hot glue around like so, and I just wrap it around a few times. I didn't really measure or anything, it's just the piece that I had, and then I just attached it a couple times. I think it was about 4 times that it went around, and then that's it. I glued it down, and then I decided to add a little bit more to the vase. Originally I was going to just do white, but then after I finished it, I looked and I thought it needed a little bit more detail. So I am adding this black paint from Bear. It's just paint that I had left over from, I don't even know from what, on hand, and I'm just going to kind of give it like an enamel type of look. So I'm adding a little bit of black to different parts of the bottle or the vase, just to give it a bit more detail and that farmhousey look that I really, really like. So this is where the spookiness comes from. Now these are just some black and purple roses that I had bought when I was going to make a Halloween wreath a few years ago, but I didn't wind up doing it. And then I wound up just taking some of the flowers off for different projects. And I'm going to be adding some eyeballs to these flowers. These eyeballs are actually erasers, I believe. These were from my old job. We were doing like an event for Halloween, and um, for whatever reason, we had these in some shapes. I don't even remember, this was so many years ago, but I kept them as like bat shapes, cat shapes, and then these eyeballs and some worms and spiders. So I kept them because I thought they would be kind of cool little things to do crafts from, but I never wound up using them until now. So I'm going to be gluing these eyeballs with just some hot glue. I've cut them in half so that way I could use both sides, and I'm just gluing them on. Now I wind up just drawing an eyeball on one of them because I cut 2 of them in half, used the eyeball sides for the 2, and then I had one white piece that I wanted to use up, and I drew my own eyeball with a Sharpie marker on there. And I just attached them to the middle of the flower, of the rose, and that's it. And I just put it in the vase, and I do that for the black one as well. So here's the completed vase. I think it turned out really, really nice. It's spooky, it's Halloween-like. It's exactly what I was going for, but yet kind of elegant. If spooky Halloween can be elegant, but I think it is. Love the little eyeballs. They're very cute. That little spider there just adds to it. And the vase itself is gorgeous, I think. If you didn't want to use Halloween stuff, you could use Christmas stuff in there. You could use fall stuff. You could use summer stuff. It'll be one that I use um, for all the seasons. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell and leave me a comment. Bye.